Hello and welcome to everybody on Cloud Fitness. So in today's video of Python series, I'm going to talk about string slicing in Python. So in my previous video, I have talked about the different data types in Python and also how we can fetch elements from a particular data type. So we have seen how we can fetch elements from a string, how we can fetch elements from a list. Right, so the same thing is nothing but slicing. Now slicing is also used to fetch elements from a string or from a list. So when we say slicing, it is usually associated with string or a list. Now the slicing is little more dynamic in nature. When I say dynamic in nature, we have already seen that how we can use indexing, right, in Python to fetch the 0th element, the first element, the third element. But now in case you want to have a window of elements sliced out, in that case we go for slicing. Now slicing also can be done in two ways. You can use the inbuilt slice method, right, that comes with the Python, or you can also use array slicing. So array slicing is something that would be very much required. So we are going to see both of them. So slicing is basically, slice method is nothing but it is a slice constructor that is used, and it will be pretty short because this is just a constructor that we have to use. And then array slicing we are going to discuss in detail. Now before moving on, I hope you remember indexing concept which I have explained to you earlier. So for example, what you see on the screen right now, string. So this can be any word, right? It can be a sentence also, anything. Right now I have taken a word called a string, right? So S is at 0th position, T is at first, R is at second, I is at third position, N is at fourth position, G is at 5th position. Now these position are, you are reading, when I am reading it from left to right, but when I read it from right to left, G is at -1, N is at -2, I is at -3, R is at -4, T is at -5, S is at -6. So if you have been watching my previous video, so you would be already aware of this indexing concept. So I wanted to just show you this before moving on to the coding part of it. So this is our Python PyCharm project, and let me simply create a new Python file over here and let me name it as slicing. Enter. So when we talk about slicing, so let me first write a string over here. Let me name that string as let's say string, same name, right? Let me name it as string 01, right? So this is the string that I have right now. This exactly has the same indexing which I showed you. And now also let me try to zoom in my part. Now this is a string that I would be using for the slicing. Right now if I try to use slice constructor, now how do we use slice constructor? I can simply say string 01, because this is a string where I want to use my slice constructor. Now to use the slice constructor, I have to use these brackets, square brackets, and inside that I can actually say slice, and inside slice if I say 3, right, let's see what happens. Let me in fact put a print statement over here and let's see what slice gives us. Now let me select my current file over here and exactly run it. So now you can see that it gave str. Now what did it give? It sliced 3 elements. Now whenever you use the slice constructor, right, what happens by default? By default it will the moment you give one number, one positive number here, right, what it will do, it will start reading from left to right and it will fetch you as many numbers as you have specified here. So you have specified 3, so it is going to give you 1, 2 and 3. The other way of looking at it is, now this is the one way. Now the other way is, now when you say slice, right, what happens with the slice? So it usually takes 3 arguments. If you do not give 3 arguments to it, still it is okay, right? I'll tell you why. So it usually takes 3 elements. Now first is the start, that is called the start element. Then the second is basically your stop element, right? And then the third is your increment. So these are the 3 elements that it takes. Now if you do not provide all 3 of them, it is still okay, right? It is still okay if you do not provide all 3 of them. Now what happened here is, now if you look here, when I gave 3, what happened here in this slice? slice, and then at start by default it will take 0 if you have not given anything. If you have not given anything, it is by default going to take 0 as the start. Now 3, Now 3 is actually considered to be stop if you give only one element, right? So here by default it is taking 3 as the stop, because the moment you give one element over here, it will consider it as a stop, right? But in case you do not give stop also, what happens by default, it will take length of the particular string that you're trying. So for example, I'm saying string 01, so I'm using my string 01, right? So by default what will happen is it is going to take the length of the string as the stop in case you do not specify stop. So there will be conditions where you cannot specify stop, that also I will show you now, don't worry with that. So I'm just giving you default parameters. So this is the syntax, right? Start, stop, increment. Now what are the default parameters? It is 0, length of the string, and increment is always 1. So these are the default ones. Just remember this. We will anyway go through all of these in detail, so no worries with that, right? So by default what I have shown you over here is that you can use slice method, something like this. In slice you have to provide three elements, three parameters, right? Start, stop, and increment. If you do not provide start, it takes 0. If you do not provide stop, it takes length of the string, right, which you are trying to do slice on. Increment by default it takes as 1. Now in this statement, when you say string 01 slice 3, what happens over here? By default it takes the start element index as 0, right, and length it takes as 3. This is what happens. So now when this happens, what will happen? Now str, it gave output as str. Why did it give output at str? Because it started from the index 0, which is s, it went to 1, right, which is nothing but t, and then it went to r, which is 2, right? So it gave you str. Now if you remember, here the number is 3, right? So always whenever you use this stop, what happens is it is not going to consider the last element because it starts from 0, right? So it has already considered 3 elements, right? It has started from 0, right? It has already considered your 3 elements, so it never takes your last index. So last index here for you it is 3, but if you look from here 0, 1 and 2, it already captured 3, right? So this is like the very basic of slicing. If you did not understand it, I do recommend watching it once more. Pause the video, play it slowly, maybe 0.75x, and just try to do it on your own and understand what I'm talking about. It might take a while to understand if you're very new to it. Now similarly, let's say in the slice I give my first element as 1, first start as 1, and let's say I give my end as 5, and then I give my increment, let's say 1. Now if I run it, you will see what happens. So it starts from index 1, right? Index 1 is nothing but t, so it will start from t. So in the output you can see the output is it starts from t, and then it will stop at the 5th index. Now when I say 5th index, it is not going to take 5 as the index. It is only going to stop at 4, right? So t is 1, r is 2, I is 3, right, and n is 4. So it stopped at 4. Now what is the use of this 1, right? Increment. So increment basically 1 is default. Now let me change this increment to 2 and let's see how it gets printed. So you will understand what is the use of this increment as well. The moment I do it as 2 and I run it, closely look at the output, what happens? You only get t and I. So if you see, your first was t, your first element was t, and it moved till your 4th index, right? R, I and n, right? But you said step 2. Step 2 means, hop one element always. So when you say step 1, it hops 0 element. But when you say step 2, it hops 1 element. So what happened? It started with t, hopped 1 element which is r, and it came to I. And then it hopped another element which is n, but then before that it has to stop because your this output itself stopped at index 4, right, or this 5, right? The index is 4, remember that. So this is nothing but this is hopping, right? So hopping is always 1 less, right? So if you say 1 as a hopping, what will happen is it will hop only 1 time, right? And if you say when you say hop 1, right, when you put here 1, it will hop 0 times, so it is not going to leave any element. But when you say hop 2, right, when you say increment 2, it is going to hop 1 time, right? So this is your indexing. Now this indexing is nothing but it is a positive indexing, right? Now let's say I can also have a negative indexing, because here I showed you that you can also count the elements from right to left, and when you count from right to left, it is -1. It starts with -1, right? Now similar case, let's see what happens when you try to do a negative indexing on the slice constructor, right? Now what happens over here? Let's say I want to start with -1, right? Let's say I want to start with -1, and let's say I want to stop. Let me just give you an example. Let me say stop at -10, right, which is basically out. Now let's say I want to hop -2, and now simply let me run it. Let's see how does it happen. Now this is little more trickier, right? If you see over here, it is little more trickier. So when I say start from -1, what it did, it picked it picked G, which is the last element, right? The output is GIT over here. It picked up the last element, right? It picked up the last element, and now you have given hop of -2, right? So it is going to hop one element at a time. It is going to hop one element, and it is going to end it till -10. -10 is not there because the string itself, the length of the string is basically 6, and here you have given -10. So basically it is going to cover all of your string. Now it is going to start from your G, right? It is going to hop each and every one element, and since the end point you have given is -10, which is not there, right? So it is going to cover the whole string. It is going to cover the whole string because the length that you have provided over here in the middle, right, your string covers it fully, right? Now first it will give G because of -1, then it will hop N because you have given -2 here, and then it will print you I, right? And then again it is going to hop R, and then it is going to give you T, and then it is again going to hop S, and then it has nothing to print. So this is how your positive and negative slicing works. Now this is using slice constructor. So probably I think just to be little sure that you understand it, I'm not going to cover everything in one video. Again, I'm going to make the second part of it, in which I will use the array constructor, right? So this was all about slicing constructor in this video, right? So I hope you understand it, and do remember to practice it on your own. Try multiple variations of it. So for example, let's say I give you one more variation right away here, right? So let me say I say instead of -2, let me give here -1. Let's see what happens. Now the moment I give here, what will happen? It completely reverses your string. Why it reverses your string? Because in case of -2 it was hopping 1, right? In case of -1 it will hop 0, right? It will start from -1, it will go till the end of your string, and it will only hop 0. There will be no hop, right? Now let's say you do not provide -10 here. What will happen? Let's see, and simply run it, right? So the moment you you did not provide anything over here, what actually happened? It started from -1, right? Then and it ended at -1 also. So it started at G and it ended at G itself, so it did not print anything. So in fact, to be more clear, let me just comment everything and rerun it so that you understand that it did not print anything. It did not print anything. Why? Because it started from -1 and it ended at -1 itself, right? So it has nothing to print. And when I say end, right, the end element is not considered. So this is, it started at 1 over here and it ended at 5, and 5 is not considered, so it will end at 4, right? Similarly, it started from -1 and it ended at -1, and -1 also it's not going to consider. So that is why it did not print here anything. So this is how you have to play around, because there can be n number of permutations and combinations over here. But remember that the basic is still the same, which I told you. The basic is exactly same, and the same basic will actually be used in the in the part 2, which I'll be talking about using the array. And remember that over here in the slice, the important part is you always use commas over here, right? You always use commas over here, And whenever you're trying to use slice, right, you put it inside these square brackets only. So if you provide it inside the curly brackets or your parentheses, it's not going to work. So you have to always provide it in the square brackets. So I hope you like this video, and do remember to like, share and subscribe my channel. And remember to watch all the previous videos of slicing, and not just slicing, in fact all the Python series. Do remember to watch all those videos as well, because they cover all the basic concepts, right? Thank you so much for being till here.